September is over and we are into October now. And I'm just sitting down to tell you about all the books that I read in the month of September. I read a total of 21 books this month, which is a little on the high side, but have to remember that that includes a couple of novellas and a few manga or graphic novel in there, so that ups it up a bit ups it up. So yeah, I'm going to be coloring a mandala here, and if I don't have much of this one left, if I don't, I will just be changing out and doing the next page, because I want to do 4 of them in this book this month, and this is the 3rd one I'm working on. So that's just a penny press magazine. So let me see, where was I? This color. Okay, so the first book that I read in September was Hug Chickenpenny, a panegyric of an anomalous child by S. Craig Zahler. And I liked this book so much that I ended up reading another one of his books. This book is very different from his other books because he's well known for the violence in his books, and his books are often called horror. This is nothing like that at all. It's just very strange, and it's depressing, I guess you could say. So what I'm going to liken it to is what it felt like to me, is that it's a grown-up version of the series of unfortunate events, except we just have this one book. And it follows Hug. Now Hug is an unfortunate baby who killed his mother being born and is deformed, highly deformed, with one leg being longer than the other, only having one arm and a nub on the other side. And they do find out that you can pull the nub out and it will go all the way down in the hand. Well, the other arm will go inside and just the hand will be sticking out of there. So a little strange. And his head is like a football, and just a whole bunch of other things, so that he basically doesn't resemble a human being. He resembles some sort of cartoon character in the way that he looks. And he's born into a miserable life. As I said, he kills his mother by being born. Nobody wants him. None of the relatives. There aren't really that many relatives close by, but the ones that they can find, they don't want him. So he ends up being sent to an orphanage. And this is where he spends about his first 4 years, I think. And he's a bane to this place because he doesn't cry. Instead, he makes this loud, unhuman sound that I can't describe it, but the book describes it quite well. And all the other children are afraid of him, or they keep wanting to know why he's like that. So when a scientist who studies anomalous things comes along and wants to adopt him, basically he wants another addition to his collection of anomalous items, and Hug gets taken from there to become a specimen for this doctor. And it's really sad. Each time his life maybe starts getting just a little bit, or he becomes more accustomed to his life, he gets taken out of it. Something happens, somebody dies, somebody gets sick, or somebody just plain doesn't want him. And he's a really nice person. He always puts other people before him, even if even if that person's not nice to him. And he's just the sweetest little guy. And you can't help but fall for him. But like a Victorian Gothic novel like that this kind of represents, is that all these horrible, sad, traumatic events are going to happen to them, and they're not the funny kind like in the Lemony Snicket books. These are devastating hardships that happen to our friend for no reason. And I'll show you a picture of the book here. Whoa, not that big. There we go. So you can see that it's quite an interesting cover. Would love to have a paperback edition of this. I just have it on Kindle because it's a gorgeous book, but it's out of print and on for an inexorbitant, is that the word I want, amount. It's over $100 for the paperback, so yeah, not paying that no matter how much I want it. So yeah, this book made me want to go try out more of the author's work. His name again was S. Craig Zoller. And also another thing about this book is that it made me cry at the end. Now I can count the number of times I've cried at the end of a book on one hand. So I was really, really shocked when I knew what was happening. I knew what was coming. I was expecting it. But I cried. And that just really makes the book fond to my heart. And it's like the longer, you know how I talk about sometimes I forget about a book right after I've read it? Well, this one is the opposite. I keep remembering it. Every now and then going about my life, I remember a scene from the book. And it's like I've come to love it more and more as it's become further and further back in my mind. So I am going to look out for, hopefully I can find the book on or at a book sale or something at some time, so that I can have it, because I'd really like to reread it again at some time in the future. So the next book that I read is another one on my Kindle, and it is by Christopher Moore. Now I used to read his books as they came out, but the last couple of years of not reading, I'm behind. I'm behind on reading his work. So I picked up Where I Would Be, and that made his next book. This one right here, Noir. And as you get it, this is a mystery suspense noir book that he's written. Christopher Moore writes humorous books. So I'll just read the little bit of a write-up that I put on this one. The main character is not at work when a black mamba arrives in a crate for him. When he returns, he finds the crate open, the snake gone, and his boss dead. He becomes embroiled in an adventure that includes a dame, men in black, a Roswell alien, a men's club, the men's club's secret meeting in a forest, and much more. It wasn't as laugh-out funny as Moore's earlier work, but I still thought it was a fun romp. Yes, so our main character finds the dame early on in the story, and they go on this hunt together. And I've totally forgotten what the actual aim of the book was. It didn't even say there, did it? But yeah, he ends up getting involved with the underworld. And he's got this snake hanging around. It disappears at the beginning, but it shows up again. Yeah, not much more I could say. That's the premise, and the book is really funny. Just like his other books, you know. He's got his tongue in cheek. He probably insults every group of people that you could imagine, and it's all done in humor. He takes it, whatever thing it is that he's what's the word? Well, he's doing a take of, like in this one he's doing a noir novel, and he says in the instructions that it was just after the war, so like 1946, America, in an American city, and that's where his noir mystery story takes place. And so he does his topic well, so that he has his characters talking and acting like they would in the 1940s. So there are some slang words that we don't use today, some which we find offensive, some which we don't understand what they are. And that's what you're going to find in any Christopher Moore book. And he's done that with everybody. Shakespeare, can't remember anything else. We had one take place in, was it Barbados? Or was it actually Jamaica? Can't remember. It was a different one of his books. But yeah, this is excellent. I think that his very first few books are the funniest. The practical demon keeping, the big, what's it called? The one with the demon in it. The one with the angel in it. The one with the whale. That's probably one of my favorites. Yeah, so those are his funniest as far as I'm concerned. But this was a lot of fun, and I read it quickly, and I really enjoyed it. And if you like that kind of thing, then you'll definitely like this. Okay, so the next books that I read were actually two book set of this manga series called Queen Emeraldas. This is volume 1. This is volume 2. They are the art. Oh, it's written and illustrated, I assume, by Leiji Matsumoto. The illustration inside is wonderful. Really like it. Yeah, really nice artwork. Looks good on screen. So I read these again because I wanted to know if I wanted to keep them on my bookcase shelf or not. And I've decided that I am going to. Queen Emeraldas is the ship, and Emeraldas is the name of the girl. And Emeraldas is a space pirate searching for the ocean of space. And she's also searching for something else, and we eventually find out that that something else is a man, and we never actually learn who he is. But in the first book we gain information about him, and by the second book we have slowly kind of gotten a grasp of who this man is she's searching. She also meets a kid along the way. I haven't written down his name. Does it come up? I open up. Well, this is about him. What's his name? Well, they just keep calling him Kid. Alright, don't get his name. We do get it, I just can't find it. So she does meet this little kid along the way. And he is building his own spaceship. He wants to be an explorer of the ocean that is space. And he wants to do it all on his own. He wants to build his own ship. And he doesn't want to be beholden to anyone. He'll work his way to do it. He won't take... When people find out about his dreams and stuff, they always want to help him out, you know, give him some money, give him some parts or whatever. But more often than not, he declines because he doesn't want to have made it by the help of others. He wants to have made it on his own. And Emeralda, once he starts flying and stuff, he meets up with Emeraldas, and Emeraldas has some kind of connection with him in her past, or maybe you have to figure this all out yourself. We just know that there's some kind of connection, and she's always there for him. Now, what have I done here? Looks like I quit coloring a row. I'll go back to this color. And yeah, so she comes along, and she seems to know where he is, and she'll come along to a town or a planet where he's going to land, or more often than not crash land, and she will go somewhere and provide some money or some equipment or something like that, and make up a story for whoever she's giving it to tell the boy, so that he won't know that it came from her. But he does often guess that it had something to do with her. And unfortunately, we get a bit of interest at the end of the book, which leads us to suggest that Emeraldas is helping this boy out now, but there will come a time when she perceives them as being enemies towards each other. And so that kind of leaves you wondering. But then the volume ends, and I don't know anything in particular, but my assumption is that the series got canceled, and that was how the book had to end. At the end of the book, there are some short stories which concerned Emeraldas and the Queen themselves sailing the seas to finish off the book. So obviously this is where it's meant to stay, and since I enjoyed it, these are beautiful hardcover books, and it's the complete set of the story. I am definitely going to keep these. These are keepers for my shelf. So, the next book that we read was a new to me book that I found on my Kindle, which I'd had there forever and had picked up on one of those deal days when it was like 99 cents or $1 or something. What I read here was this book here. I'll just show it to you, and then I'll take it back so I can read it. This is a science fiction, and it is book 1 of The Bubble. That's the series. There's 9 books in the series, and this one is called Defragmenting Daniel, the Organ Scrubber, and it's by Jason Whirlbeluff. So basically this is what we can call dystopian of our world, and I loved dystopian stories. That's pretty much the only kind of sci-fi that I read these days is dystopian. So this was fantastic. I just absolutely loved it. We are starting off with Daniel, who lives in the gutter, as does everybody else who doesn't live in the bubble. And the bubble is for the well-to-do, the upper middle class to the royalty, or, you know, movie star type of class. So yeah, the hoity-toities live inside the bubble. So those in the gutter, children who are orphaned or sometimes sold to the orphanage, go there and they become parts for the people who live in the bubble. So let's say somebody in the bubble is going blind in one eye. Well, they will take a real eye from a child in the orphanage and give it to the person, in the wealthy person who needs a new eye. Now the child will be given another eye, but they're given a technological, no, that's not the word, manufactured, let's call it that, manufactured eye. And it works properly, does everything it's supposed to do, but it's, you know, it's not real. And so here in the orphanage, these children have to stay until they're 18, and at that time they're allowed to go free off into the world. And Daniel is coming up to being 18. Oh, they're also told whether they are worthy enough to go into the bubble. That's what happens, right? And so anyways, Daniel, his whole entire life, has wanted to get his parts back. He's got 6 parts that have been taken from him. And the very last one was his amygdala. And this, I don't know too much about the amygdala, but in the story it says that there's some control over violence there. So now that he's missing his, seems to be the reason why he can become more violent. And so he sneaks into the bubble by tracking down one of the guys who had, well, the first person is who has his eye, and he tracks him down, and then he gets let into the bubble by him, and then that's where he starts his story. But halfway through the story, he meets Margaret, and Margaret is an AI who wants to become human. So they're kind of doing the same thing, but Daniel has to be the killer, and she funds it because he doesn't have any money since he came from the gutter and never had a job. The orphans don't get paid, they get provided for while they give away their body parts so that they're not a bane on society. And they do get mechanical replacements, so this is how it's all figured out so that it's fair for everyone. So he meets up with her, and the two of them end up committing crimes and stuff, and on their trail is a is a police cop who is a trans woman and having an awful lot of problems because his new member doesn't work. So we get all that, but in the meantime, he's chasing after Daniel. Now, there's one other thing that makes the cop and Daniel have something in common, but you'll find out what that is later on. So that's the story. It's a novella. It's really short. It's got like, oh, here I can tell you. Here, this does the pages. It has, oh, it's not a novella. It's just a really short novel. It's 220 pages. I just read it like zap, and it was over for me. Really, really good read. And at that point, I decided that I am going to read more in the series as long as it keeps me interested. Because I'm not really doing series these days. I'm trying not to start any new ones, but sometimes it can't be helped. So, the next book that I read was Mr. Be Gone by Clive Barker. And I've heard a lot about this book being favorites of some people. Some people's favorite Clive Barker, so I was really looking forward to going into this and ended up being really disappointed. It's more of a funny book than it is a horror book. Yes, it's got some, I guess we could call it unnecessary violence in it. The violence is there for the sake of the violence because we are dealing with demons here. So let me see what I wrote down about this before I go on. Yes. A man comes along and he opens up a book which we're expecting, which puts us into the story right away. We're the person who opened the book. And between the lines on the pages, there's something there until eventually it makes its presence known. And this is his story that he's written down in here, or is writing down as we go along. And he is stuck in this book until somebody burns it, this demon. So he keeps begging us to stop reading and burn the book. And then he'll like, oh, well, I'll just give you a little bit more of my story. Then you promise that you will stop? Promise? Of course, we never promise. But he's like, okay, I'm taking that as a yes. And then he goes on to tell a bit more of his life. And it's all, like funny. I've written down here, a funny, dark, humorous farce with pretty gross descriptions of death scenes. And it reminds me a lot of A Dirty Job by Christopher Moore. Yeah, it definitely does. So yeah, there's some pretty violent and gory scenes in here, but it's a comedy rather than a horror. It's a comedy with horror in it. I guess we could put it. And it's good. I really enjoyed it, but I had thought I was getting back into some really good, adult Clive Barker. Now, when I've just said that doesn't mean I recommend this book for because of the violence. That may not be something you want your to be exposed to. I know a lot of people just say YA, but I've said yeah my whole entire life, so I'm not going to stop now. That's what I call it, yeah. Yeah, so that's basically what that book is about. Then the next book that I read is a 3-volume manga collection called, called Black Gate by Yukiko Sumiyoshi. And this is all 3 volumes bound up into 1 volume. This is an old out-of-print book, so I wanted to reread it, and make sure it was something I wanted to keep on my shelf, and it most certainly is. Well, it's hard to remember plots of manga books once you're done with them, so let me read what I wrote. Senju promises to protect a great Mitadamashi. Okay, there's beings called Mitadamashis, and Senju promises to protect one, a Mitadamashi's son, and so he raises him. Eventually, the child discovers his parentage. His name is Hijiri, and he finds his hidden powers, including never aging and living eternally. He starts to discover who he is and trains to be a Mitadamashi himself, one who closes black gates. White gates are where dead souls go. So in this land we want white gates because when you die, that's where your dead soul is going to go, into the white gate, through the white gate. Now, I don't know who it is, but these black gates get thrown up or just open up by themselves. And Mitadamashi, I could say it when I was reading the book. Mitadamashi, yeah. The Mitadamashi, they go and work together as a team to close the black gates before anybody gets sucked into them. Because not only will they take a dead soul, they will also suck the soul out of a living person and send it in there. So of course that's a terrible state of being, and Hijiri wants to work at closing those gates. Once learning his actions have consequences, often of both life and death, Origi finds himself fighting Senju in a life or death situation. So that's the man who raised him. They want to close all the gates and eradicate death forever. So that's what Sujihu, where are we? Oh, I know I'm messing everything up. Senju, okay. Senju has joined this group of people. Some of them are, or most of them are like paranormal beings like himself with powers. And they want to close all the gates and stop dying forever so that nobody will ever die again. Well, the Mitadamashis, like Hijiri, they know that there can't be death because of all the problems it will cause. I'm not going to go into the philosophical stuff that the book goes into, but they don't want that to happen, and so they're fighting them. Those are our two groups who are battling with each other. And yeah, it's good. It may look childish on the front, but it's not. It's rated T for ages 14 plus. So yeah, book that I have decided to be keeping. So the next book that we come to, read on my Kindle, and it is one that I had never heard of the author before. I think it was just recommended to me on Kindle. It's called The Locked Door, and I don't remember anything about it, so we're gonna have to read. So there we go, The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. Let's see what I have to say about it. It's told from the point of view of a serial killer's daughter. When bodies start appearing bearing the mark of a serial killer, bearing the mark of her serial killer father, she is the prime suspect. She is an unreliable narrator, and the book has a creepy vibe while nothing disturbing ever happens. Her father always kept the basement door locked, and now she knows someone who also has a locked door in their apartment. A quick read. So our girl has a father who's in jail for being a serial killer. New bodies start showing up, and they've got the mark that her father used to put on them. So of course they suspect her of being the serial killer. But obviously that pans out in the end. But I wish I'd used names here, but she's friends with someone, and she goes back to their place and finds out that they have a locked door that nobody's allowed to go into. And that makes her think of the locked door in her house that nobody was ever allowed to go into. That was her father's serial killer dungeon. So she starts wondering, why does somebody who lives by themselves in an apartment have a room that they always keep locked? Who are they locking it from, since they're the only ones who live there? That's the question that gets her thinking and gets her going to eventually figuring out who the serial killer is. And that's a very quick read. That was a very quick read. The next book I read is Fantasticland. And this is about a theme park. And the theme park is in Florida, and it's between Disney World and I can't remember the name of the other park. SeaWorld, is it? I don't know. There's another theme park down there. So it becomes a triangle of theme parks rather than just the two that are there. Now they've built themselves in a watery area, kind of like a swampy area, and that's part of one of their attractions. Is kind of like life in the swamp. It's all artificial in the theme park, but you know what I mean. So anyways, there's a tornado coming, or is it a hurricane? What do you get in Florida? You get hurricanes, don't you? Yep, a hurricane is coming, and first the people at Fantasticland decide to just hang in there until they find out if it's coming their way or not. And when they find out that it is, they start evacuation. They manage to evacuate all the visitors to the park, and they have in place this system where a skeleton staff and they've been chosen, and they're paid some good money to be on this skeleton crew, who will stay behind and just kind of watch things and take care of things at that end. They have a bunker in which they can hide. There is plenty of food and toilet paper and anything that these people could need for a several day stay. So there's no need to worry about that. So that's what happens, and we get these people who are left behind. Well, the couple of days ends up turning into many, many weeks. And while their supplies are enough to last them the majority of that time, they do still need to start going out and hunting some of their own food. But what happens when you get a group of people like that and there is no law is that law eventually takes over. And no, the person who has been put in charge of this thing, the person who was the manager in charge or director, whatever, he's a real wimp. An event happens during the tornado itself, which just brings everybody to distrust him. And so nobody's listening to him at all. So no, they can't decide on who to pick as a leader, because there's people who go, we don't need a leader, and then other people saying, yeah, we do, but it's not going to be me. So nobody wants to be the leader. So what eventually happens, and kind of naturally on its own, is that the staff there, they all go back to their sections where they worked, their Fantasyland, whatever it was called. And they form their own little hierarchy within their group. Let's see what I put else in here. Yeah, okay, so the staff ranges in age from high school to college age kids, and they quickly devolve into tribes. That's what I was describing there, who raid, steal, threaten, and outright declare war on each other. They end up spending about a month there. I think it's 6 weeks, but I'm not sure. The aftermath has people in the outside world wondering what has become of our online security, or of our online society. Did this happen because they had no electricity and nothing to be online with, no phones to take? Phones didn't work, so they couldn't take selfies. Is this what happens to children now that they're so hooked in to the internet? That's one of the questions. I don't really think it's a viable question, though, because this sort of thing happens whenever you put a group of people together. There's that in the 1950s, that experiment that guy did with a couple of scout troops, a couple of scout troops, and he told them that they were out in the wilderness, took them out in the wilderness, and then left them alone for a little while, or I don't know how he was watching them, but they ended up devolving into two sides, and the people who were in power would basically physically punish the people who weren't doing what they were supposed to do. And then, of course, there's Lord of the Flies. And then there's also that story of, that psychology story that was done, where they took a bunch of volunteers for the thing, split them, put so many over to the side, and said, okay, you guys are going to be in prison, and this lot right here, you're the prison officials, and you guys are the prisoners. Well, it barely takes hours before the prison keepers are beating on the prisoners and basically torturing them by making them do silly and embarrassing and then eventually hurtful things. So I don't think it has anything to do with the online world. I think it's just a basic, it's one of those basic things about humanity as a state. But anyways, I didn't mean to get on to that kind of a topic, but yes, that's what this addresses. The next book that I read was, and I was so happy to find this next book, and found myself Kirsten Maudlin. And this is the book that I read right here. Hope you can see it. The Arrangement. It's kind of a dark cover there. So it's called The Arrangement. And that's the one that I read first, because I'm still reading her books. And This is about a husband and wife who are having bits of problems with their marriage. And one day the wife comes up to the husband and says, you know, I think something that might really help our marriage is if we have an open marriage for a while. Try that out and see if it puts the spark back in our lives. Now, I've never heard such a dumb thing in my life, but if that's what they think, then let them try. So they start off setting it all up. They spend a week setting it all up. And then her night is Tuesday and his night is Thursday. And so the very first time on a Tuesday, the woman actually goes out on her date, and she finds him pretty boring. But he's just full of questions about herself. So, you know, the date goes on and stuff, but she's really glad when it's over. Well, somehow, I can't remember how, but somehow she had let him see. Oh, he walks her to the door, at least. She lets him do that. But somehow she had let him see, was it her phone number? Or no, I don't even think he drove her home, because she's trying not to let him know where she lives and, you know, her number and all that sort of stuff. But he's able to track down who she is and where she is and all that kind of stuff. So he starts stalking her. And she's had so many... is this the one where she gets the letters under the door? I think she gets letters under the door. I'm starting to mix them up here. Let me read what it says. Things start to go terribly awry. I don't say. Anyways, he starts doing stuff. I have Amazon Arrival. She starts doing stuff that he starts doing stuff that makes her really kind of afraid, and she feels stalked. And so her husband doesn't even get to go on his date, because he's like, whoa, we're stopping this right now. And so they're all concerned with this stalker thing going on. But we kind of forget about the husband and what's going on with him. And once we turn our attention to not just the woman and her getting stalked, and we include the man in our attention, we start to see that there are things that are going terribly, terribly wrong. Yes, terribly awry. Very fast-paced, with twists coming at the end of about every other chapter. Yeah, that's what I loved about this book. It was like, it's a novella. I believe it's somewhere like around 120 pages. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but that's around what I'm thinking it is. And it's just like at the end of every short chapter, you're going, okay, just one more chapter. And then just one more chapter. Just one more. You just can't help it. And especially when the end of every other chapter is basically going, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And then you're like, okay, gotta read the next chapter. And then it's like, oh no. And I just absolutely loved the experience that I went online and I downloaded a couple more of her books. They're on Kindle Unlimited, so that's a bonus. I also went and pre-ordered 3 or 4 books that she had coming out up to the end of this year. One of them already did come out, and I've already read it, but I don't know if it was this month or the month I'm telling you about, or the month that I'm reading. So the next book that I read was a reread. It's kind of what I'm doing on some of my shelves here. Now that I've got my shelves all neat and tidy, one place for the books I've read and one place for my TBR. I'm kind of wanting to check which books I want to keep that I have read. So this was my next reread. This is Pork Pie Hat by Peter Straub. And this is a Cemetery Dance publication. And it's a novella. It's also illustrated. Just right when I come to a picture. It's also illustrated. That would have been a good picture that I missed. Yeah, it takes place on Halloween night. And let's see, write it here. A jazz-loving journalist interviews the legendary Pork Pie Hat. During the interview, Pork Pie tells him something that happened one Halloween night when he was a kid. So the story seems to be taking place in, don't know if I can remember. It's in a modern time, but it's not like now. Probably the 70s. The book is taking place in about the 60s or the 70s, I would say. And so when Pork Pie tells the story of when he was a kid, we're going back to the 30s, and he lived in a shack in a part of town that they called Dark Town, and that's where all the black people lived, because that's why they called it Dark Town. And he basically gives him an insight into what life was like back then. And it's got some creepy moments in it, since this is a horror story. And I quite enjoyed it. It's not a 5-star read for me, you know. It's like a 4-star. It was really good, but nothing that, like, you know, stands out to me. I want to keep it a little while longer because it's the only Cemetery Dance publication that I have. So I kind of just want to have it a little while longer. Maybe at some point I'll pass up on it. So now, the next thing I did was I came back to S. Craig Zahler. He was the one who wrote Hug Chickenpenny at the beginning that it started with. So like I say, most of his books are not humorous like that one was. So this one is called Wraiths of the Broken Land. And this is a very violent and disturbing book, but it has a fantastic story. So a group of men, a father, 2 brothers, so 2 or 3 brothers, I think it's 2 brothers, a father, 2 brothers, and then some extra people who are basically friends of the fathers from the olden days. So we're taking place right now in the Wild West. It's probably like about 18, I don't know if they give the date of the time at all, but I think maybe 1860s. And so anyways, his 2 daughters are kidnapped, and then they are sold to a whorehouse. Now it has taken several months for the father to find out where they are and to get this group of people together that he wants to have with them, because this is a go in there situation and we must win. There's no other state. He can't lose his daughters for good. So that's what they do, and the point of view switches from them on their riding the trail to get to them, because it's quite a distance away, and then it goes to the daughters, and both of them are in really bad shape. Both of them are handling it in their own individual ways, but they're both in their own bad shape, and they've had everything thrown at them. So this has been a horrible ordeal for them, and they keep dreaming of the day when Daddy's going to come rescue them, because that's just what they know he'll do. So eventually he comes. What do I write down here? A brutal and heart-pounding Western set just after the Civil War. Yeah, okay. Or the War of Southern Independence, as they name it in the book. These are realistic men with elements of good and evil. And this actually, I used to read Westerns and really enjoy them. And this has made me want to kind of read some more Westerns again. There's one scene in this book, though, where we've got one of our good guys trying to get away from the bad guys, and he's out in the front, you know, and this big group of bad guys is coming behind him, and, you know, he's getting away from them. They're getting a little closer. He's getting away from them, and he sees the camp, and he's headed towards there. And, you know, reading that whole thing, my heart started thumping. I could hear the horse's hooves, and, like, I was deep breathing, and it was like he held the tension so well. We knew that he was close, and was he going to make it? And at the final end, he makes it so that we don't know. We don't know. He's gone. We don't know what's happened. Is he dead? Did he arrive? What? And then we find out. And I'll let you find out yourself when you get to that part. But very, very heart-pounding. I really enjoyed that. And that is a 5 out of 5 for me. Definitely recommend that. That is Raids of the Broken Land. I guess I should show you a picture. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there we go. It's got a scorpion on the cover, and there's a very, very, very disturbing reason why why the scorpion is there. It is part of the story. Then the next book that I read was a short non-fiction memoir. A Canadian writer, actually, David Gilmour. He used to be a film critic. I don't know what he he was on TV quite a bit, but I don't know what he does now besides write novels. And he wrote this little book when his son was 16. It was such a battle every morning to get his son up and get him to school that they were just at their wits' end. I mean, there's only so much push you can give to a 16-year-old, or they're gonna push back, and then things are really not going to be good. So what he and his wife decide is, okay, you can quit school. And the father says, but you must watch 3 movies a week that I pick. So he thinks this is a great deal. And then the father picks movies. Like, he knows how he's picking the movies because, like I said, he's a film critic, and he goes through certain philosophies and certain time periods and certain types of movies. And so basically, the boy is starting to get an education from watching the movies, but not just from watching the movies, it's from talking about the movies. And when he becomes of age, he eventually does go to community college and make something of himself. So don't know whether this is an example of something that every parent should do, because it's probably going to not work more often than it does work. But I'm all for homeschooling, so if you do a little bit more than just watch movies, then I would support you. But I think it's just it's a good list of movies, if not anything else, to watch these movies in the order that he picked them. That's kind of a little bit of a movie education for yourself. So I'm not going to show you a picture of that. It's just a nonfiction book. Next book, we have Kirsten Maudlin again. So let's go back to her. Oh, wait, hey, hold still. So the next book is called Widow Falls by Kirsten Maudlin, and this is her latest book out. So it was a new release last month, and it wasn't as good as the first one I read, but it wasn't so bad that it made me stop wanting to read her. It's just different. It's a young woman gets a seasonal job as a whitewater rafting guide. The camp that she works for provides cheap lodging, all inclusive. But when she sees the actual one-room lodging, that is only the beginning of the truth she finds out about, including the girl she's replaced mid-season disappeared and no one's looking for her. So she gets there and she finds out that all the guides, and I think there's like 7 maybe, boys and girls, men and women, all share one room. They sleep in there. In one corner is a shower curtain. Behind that is the shower. They dress together in there, and she's like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? She enjoys the actual going out there and being a whitewater rafting guide, but the behind-the-scenes stuff is just too unreal for her. And everybody there just accepts what's going on. You know, like, why does he do that? Why do you guys let him do that? Why don't you just say no? And it's like, don't rock the boat. Okay, or we just don't, we're not allowed to do that or go there or whatever, and that's just the way it is. He's the boss, you know, but she decides to take him on. She's not going to just cow down to him, and, well, this gets her into big, big, big trouble. And she starts to search for the missing girl, which puts her in nobody's good books. And that's basically the story. It felt very young adultish, very but I mean, I lost that feeling at a certain point, and I was okay with it. But then towards the end, it got pretty young adultish again. And I think I would recommend that. Nowhere does it say if it's for adults or young adults, but I would definitely classify this one as being more entertaining to young adults than to actual adults. So I'm going to say that about it. So the next book that I read was a classic. Let's get a picture of it. It was Our Lady of Darkness by Fritz Leiber. Now I think I've read some short stories by Fritz Leiber, but I've never read one of his books, and I have never read this classic. So I really don't remember how I went on with it. I don't think it was like truly captivating to me, though I was okay reading it. A man watches out of his window. Oh, this one, yeah. A man watches out of his window with binoculars, and he's looking at the hill that's like straight across from where his apartment is, way, way across the city. There's what they call the mountains, but they're hills actually. And so straight across, as the crow flies, he sees that there is what must be some kind of hippie doing morning exercises. because he sees him there every morning, and he appears to have a lot of hair, and he's dancing, moving around. He doesn't know if he's just doing a dance or whatever, but he wonders about this guy, like, how can he be so happy and every morning? I need to meet this guy. So he sets off one day, and it takes him a good portion of the day to get there, and he goes up to the top of the hill, and the guy's not there. And he thinks, oh darn, the one day I come over here, he's not here. And then he has his binoculars with him. He takes them everywhere he goes with them. Then he thinks, well, I wonder if I can see my window to my apartment from here. So he's looking around for it, and then he goes, oh, that's it. And then through the binoculars, he sees his hippie man waving at him through his own window. So that is a total shock. And what follows is basically a Lovecraftian tale. If you've read Lovecraft, I'm in the process of just finishing up reading a complete volume of his tales. You'll know the rest of what follows has a lot of Lovecraft elements and themes and thoughts in it. It even takes place in New England. So yeah, it's okay. That's basically all I can say for it. I don't really remember too much more of the story than how it began. So we'll have to leave that one at that. Now the next book that I read is called Hospital Hill. Kind of a gloomy front cover there. And this is by Catherine Anderson. This one does not stick in my mind very much. Let's see what I wrote down. A nurse is called back to the psychiatric hospital she worked in the 60s to collect data on the records as the final building readies for demolition. Her memory takes her back to those days, and they weren't all good times. She must uncover the truth because someone is trying to stop her. Okay, now I've said that it's very young adult in both the language and the content, and that it got all romantic. Yuck. Yeah, I'm really not remembering the story very much, and I do remember thinking that I must have gotten my hands on a young adult book here, because it's a story about where she's going back to the days in the 60s when the hospital wasn't run very well, and there was all sorts of abuses and such going on in the psychiatric hospital, which unfortunately was the case in a lot of those places at that time in history. And so now the history is coming forwards with what she's digging up in these records. She's found something that she wants to, or she's not sure whether she should go public with or not, but then it seems like there's someone who doesn't want her to know, and is that someone real, or is it haunted? But yeah, nothing really went very far. The scenes kept really tame, which definitely wouldn't have been so if it had been an adult novel. And some of the language just was very immature, not the way that I would expect adults to be talking to one another. So yeah, I felt like I'd gotten my hands on a whether it is one or not. There are no young people characters, so I'm assuming it's not. But yeah, not the greatest book in the world. Now the next one is one that I forgot to write down on my sheet. And this is Censor, which is upside down. Nope, it isn't. Where do we go? Here we go. Just move this out of the way. See, the next book that I read was Censor, and this was a new book to me this month. It is Junji Ito's latest release, and it is a full book. It is a full manga novel. Most of the books that we get from him these days are short story collections, but this is a complete story. He's going back to his roots a bit here, where we're getting some body horror, and his art is really well done, though it's nowhere near on the... It's comparable to Uzumaki, but it's nowhere. It's just nowhere. Let me try and show you some of the pictures. You see this stuff here that we see floating in the air is volcano hair. And volcano hair is usually black, but it is coming out white from this volcano, and it's coming out into incredible quantities that were left with things like this, so that it so yeah, we end up with these big things. So there's this cult that is trying to get the power from this girl right here, who is either a ghost, or she is the original girl who supposedly died a long time and has kept herself incredibly young. This woman right here is the head of this cult. And yeah, we get a lot of weird things going on, as you can tell from these pictures here. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. Not too much of a story, besides this girl having these golden fibers in her hair. And yeah, just, I mean, here we go. This is the kind of art that this guy does. I mean, he's fantastic. Just his lines are beautiful, and his shading, and it's just gorgeous art. And when he gets freaky, he really gets freaky. So yeah, you may not want to have seen that, and I guess I should have put a warning to close your eyes while we looked at this, but oops, sorry. I'll try to remember next time. I know I did last time. And this has a really nice inside jacket too. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? You could like put that up on your wall. I guess it'd be kind of hard to get it framed because of the strange shape, but very nice. And the book's quite nice looking when it's naked as well. I always like looking, my first thing to do when looking at a hardcover book is to take off the jacket and see what it looks like naked. So, there we go. So now, the next book to that I read was The Swallow by Cheris Cotter. And I've never read a book by this woman before. She is Canadian, I believe. Oh no, she's... She grew up in England, moved to BC, and now moved to Newfoundland, so that's where she is now. So this is a beautiful, beautiful middle grade ghost story. It's about these two girls who find out that they live beside each other. They both have their favorite place in the attics of their houses, which are next door to each other. one day one of them hears the other one crying, and they discover each other. Now, for both of their own reasons, they assume that the other one is a ghost. And for the most of the book, they're calling each other ghost. You're the ghost. No, you're the ghost. No, I'm not a ghost. You're a ghost. Type of thing. And so during the book, they become really close, good friends, and they're on the hunt to find out if she's, because this is the girl who's in the lead, so she wants to find out if she is really a ghost. And it's just a really sweet, tender story about two lonely girls. They're befriending each other and becoming each other's best friend, but what is going to happen if and when they find out if one of them is a ghost? And yeah, and that's really all I can say. It's that simple a story, because it is middle grade. But I really like reading middle grade stories. They don't have all the issues that young adult books have. And I used to read a lot of but I kind of switched over to middle grades because I don't like reading books about issues. And to me, an issue is anything that has to do with social whatever. And I don't want that when I read books. I read for escapism, not for the news. And so yeah, I found out that I came to a point where I couldn't find a young adult book that didn't deal with some kind of issue, whether it be just bullying or sexuality or something to do with the military, or it just basically had a liberal or a Republican slant to it. And I don't want any of that. I just want to sit down, read a story about people who are people, and aren't we all, and just enjoy it. And I find I get that from middle grade. And this wasn't babyish at all. It's just the story of friendship. And I highly recommend it for your children and for yourself. Lovely, beautiful story. I'm going to try reading another one by her, Cheris Cotter, because if her other books are as good as this one, then I definitely want to know about it. And then I believe the last book I read, nope, not the last book. I've still got a few more to go here. The last one of my own books here is, let's get it right way around, is Shiver by Junji Ito. So this is Shiver by Junji Ito, and I will ask you to look away until we get to the next book if you didn't like the creepiness of his last book. So this is a beautiful book. I just love the illustration on the front. And his books always feel so nice. This one has that kind of like rubbery feeling. We've got some nice blue end pages. So this one is a collection of short stories. And this is one of my favorite of his short story collections. There's the stories aren't interconnected with each other. It's really kind of hard to describe each story in a book of short stories, but I'll show you some of the nice art that's in here. Yeah. This next story is not going to be good for people who suffer from that, holes and things. But yeah, her neighbor has this disease where she has holes in her arms. And then her grandpa died of it, we can see here. My sister can't stand looking at stuff like that. I don't know whether she has a full-blown case of that thing you get from holes. I know Penny has it over at Pebbles Coloring. But let's see if we can find some really good art in here to look at. Oh yeah, there's two stories about this model lady here. So here's the model right here. I don't know if you can see in that picture there, but she's not exactly of model standards. And then they meet her in person. And they eventually find out her true self here. Those teeth. Ooh. So yeah, he's pretty good at drawing creepy pictures. So yeah, I don't want to spend more time looking through this, but this is my favorite. Well, I won't say it's my favorite yet until I've reread them all, but this is a reread for me. And this is definitely one of my favorite of his short story collections. And it is called Shiver, and there are 9 of Junji Ito's best stories as selected by himself. Okay, so the rest are ebooks. Just a couple more to go, and then we're at the end. 2 more, I believe. So the next book that I read was the second book in the Defragmenting Daniel series. It's called The Face in a Jar. I can't tell you how much I am enjoying this series. It's called the Bubble series. This is book number 2, The Face in a Jar. Defragmenting Daniel, The Face in a Jar. Now, Daniel continues to hunt down the owners of his body parts so that he can kill them and get his parts back. He starts to feel a tinge of consciousness that is a teeny bit disturbing to him, which is kind of making himself ask, do the means justify the end? It's not bothering him enough that he stops killing, though. Now, Margaret is becoming bossier and more in control. And she is beginning to look more like a human, causing Daniel to start thinking of her as a her, rather than as an AI. So Margaret is also becoming quite bloodthirsty and wants to get her hands into things as well, leaving Daniel feeling a little scared of her. And that's really all I can say without saying anything that actually happens. I'm really enjoying it. Looking forward to the 3rd book. Now, the way this book is written, I believe, is that every 3 are going to focus on a certain character and their situation. So the next book, Defragmenting Daniel, the book 3, should be the last of his story. At least that's the way I'm seeing it. Then the next one that I read was a weird little thing called Dear Laura by Gemma Amor. Our cover right there. So on Laura's 13th birthday, her best friend disappears, or goes missing, and is never found. Then following that, every day on her 13th birthday, she gets a letter from the person who killed her best friend, and he promises to give her a clue as to where she can find her best friend, obviously the body. And so that goes on for a little while. She finds it disturbing, but then she moves away and she goes to college, and she starts a new life. She gets married, she has a child, and all this time, and I believe it's been 30 years now, she hasn't heard from this guy at all. So she's just figured out that she's not going to hear from him again. But then, one day, on her birthday, a letter comes. And the letter has a whole bunch of clues. And now she's figured out what the clues stand for during when she was getting them before. Towards the end of her getting them, she had found out what they meant, what they were. And so now she's given a whole bunch of clues so that she can piece together the answer here. And so she goes to the final place where all these clues have sent her. And I'm not going to say any more than that because it is a very short story or a very short book from there. But yeah, pretty creepy with the letters from a killer type of angle. Yeah, so if you like that kind of thing, then you can give this a try. I thought it was okay. It wasn't anything special, but it wasn't terrible or anything either. And then finally, the very last book that I read was There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikuko Sumura. There's no such thing as an easy job. Now, this is, I didn't write down what, was this Korean? I'm sorry, I can't remember which nationality the author is. It's Asian. For some reason, I'm thinking it's Korean and not Japanese. It's one or the other. So I have I like the fiction that comes out of the East. I think it's quite unusual, to say the least, to what our Western books are about. So this book is about a woman, I didn't write down her name, who leaves her job. It's a good job she had, but she just doesn't feel satisfied. She doesn't feel like she's not happy, whatever. So she goes to this recruiting agency or whatever. I'm not sure what it was called. But you go there and then they give you a job, and if you agree to it, then you go show up for work. So she starts taking all these jobs which are below the job that she originally had. And the first one is to, basically, she's spying on somebody. There are hidden cameras in someone's apartment, and she and her fellow workers are to watch every single minute of this guy's life. And first she thought this was going to be some sort of creepy wives wanting to catch their husbands in affairs type of thing, but it's not like that at all. There's obviously some higher group or whatever that's wanting to watch this person, like crosses her mind that it's like a criminal case or something like that. We never do know. So she gets bored of this job. She also has to basically live there. She gets 6 hours a day off, and other than that, she has a room. She gets room, board, and she lives in the same building where she works, except for those 6 hours at night. And some people sleep in the building, and I can't remember if she did or if she came to work each morning. So yeah, she goes back to, I think her name is Margaret, and gets another job. I can't remember the orders of the jobs, but the last job, there are 5 jobs altogether, and each one she learns a little something about herself, and she kind of becomes less and less specific. When she first asks for her first job, she basically says, I want a job doing nothing all day and getting paid for it. And so that's how she got this job of sitting in front of the screen doing nothing all day and got paid for it. Her requirements for what her job, and it needed to be an office job. Well, her requirements for a job become less and less as time goes on, and by the time she comes to her last job, she says, you know, it doesn't have to be an office job either. I think I'll try jobs that aren't an office job. So I know 2 of them now. 2 of the non-office jobs were putting up posters, going around the neighborhood and putting up these posters that say, drink water, save water, don't litter, you know, that kind of stuff. And then the last job that she gets is working at a kind of reserve, or maybe what we would think of as a national park. It's not a big place, and her job there is to man this building. I think it's off season, so not much is happening, so she doesn't really have a lot to do, but she does spend her time out in nature and kind of working outdoorsy and working with nature. And so we eventually do come to a point, but each one of these jobs that she works at is really very interesting. The characters are great. I love the people that she works with, and I loved her. She was a fun character to go along. And these jobs are very different than the types of jobs that we have here in North America. So that was, or at least that most of us would have access to. I'm sure there are something like them, but they're really interesting to it's really interesting to go on this journey with her, where she not only explores other types of jobs than the ones she had gone to school for and trained for and had a successful career in, until she grew tired of it, to let her experience some other kinds of work. She also gets to know what it is that she wants to do with her life. And so by the end of the book, she has come to some decisions, and you'll find out what that is if you decide to take this journey along with the main character of this book. I like it. If you like that kind of stuff, you know, it's one of those books where nothing really happens. You know, there's no major climax. It's just a good story about an interesting girl, and some things happen to her. So that's it. That's everything I've read I read last month in September. All the links to all the books will be down below, so you can read the reviews, get further information on them, and if you want to purchase them using my links, I do get, that does help this channel out. So, in the meantime, I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I will see you either next month with this type of reading wrap-up and coloring book video, though I did not do very much coloring. I'll finish this very shortly when I get off. Or I'll see you in the next video. So, hope you have a nice day. Goodbye!